Hi, you're listening to Dave J in LA, and on the phone now from the UK, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve Hackett. Hi Steve, nice to talk to you. How are you doing today?
Very good, nice to talk to you.
And you too. Well, it's just over a year since we last spoke, and that was before the Genesis Revisited tour when you played in LA. Since then, you've recorded the Wolflight album, and now you're touring with the Acolyte to Wolflight and Genesis Revisited tour. So I'm guessing from that we can expect a complete history of Steve Hackett's guitar playing.
That's right. It's an attempt to cover all bases, really, both the Genesis stuff and my very early work, the early solo stuff, and also the latest solo stuff. So it's really kind of right across the board. It's two sets of music that is it's very broad-based, lots of different styles, instrumentals, but vocal tunes as well. So we're kind of like two bands in one. There are a number of people who take lead vocals. It's interesting. I do some, and Nat Sylvan does quite a bit, and also Gary, our drummer, has got a fine voice. So it's an interesting show. All sorts of variations on a theme.
So will you be mixing the material together, or are you going to have one half of the performance dedicated to Genesis Revisited and the separate half just your solo work?
It's two separate halves. You're right first time. The first half is the solo stuff, and then we have an intermission, and then we come back with the Genesis stuff.
After listening to the Wolflight album, I would say that it's probably your most comprehensive and diverse solo album to date, whereas some of your other albums have maybe fitted into a particular genre or category. This album covers so many territories, from progressive rock to blues to Middle Eastern music to classical. Was that intentional when you went in to record the album?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I thought, in a way, to have something which was as varied as possible. There are so many different styles. There are so many things I've come across, and musicians that I've worked with who don't just play guitar or rock instruments, but beyond that, people like Malik Mansirov from Azerbaijan, who plays the tar, which is a short-scale string instrument. It's related to the guitar and the sitar. It's the same family, but it's like working with someone who's a cross between Ravi Shankar and John McLaughlin. So he's got extraordinary chops, and he plays at the beginning of the title track, practically unaccompanied for a while there.
So I was wondering, before the recording process starts, when you're going to record an album, do you have an idea in your mind of what you want the sound to be like when you're finished? Or do you just go in with some basic ideas and see how they developed in the recording process? And in this album in particular, Wolflight, what were those influences that you took in there with you?
Well, I think if you're going to throw a wide net over world influences, then to a certain extent, you've got the travelogue aspect going with that. And I've visited places as various as Atlanta, Georgia, Hungary, Budapest. I've been to the Far East, all over the show, and all of these things influence what I do. So it's part European, but then it's also, partly American, and there are so many different kinds of things. So once again, it's a little bit like those CBS sampler albums, The Rock Machine Loves You, except that it's me, and it's all the things that have influenced me.
On the subject of recording different styles of music, or maybe different guitar techniques, are there any particular themes or ideas, areas that you'd like to explore and record that you haven't yet done?
Well, yes. Funnily enough, in recent times, I've started work on a new album, and I'm hoping to get that finished by October. But meanwhile, of course, Wolflight is the current one. I'm always working on something new. As something is current, there's always something coming up behind it. And I started looking at flamenco stuff. I was interested in the way mainly the way flamenco players attack the nylon guitar like a percussion instrument, and I think that they're the greatest rhythm guitarists in the world. So I've been getting my fingers around some of that stuff, and that's proved very challenging but very rewarding as well. So to get an influence of that into some rock stuff, I've been finding that that's been a great source of motivation for me.
I was wondering if perhaps you could enlighten us into your normal writing process before you go into a studio to record an album. Is it a case of picking up a guitar and just messing around until you come up with a sound that you like or a theme that you like? Or do you first get an idea in your head which you then translate into music? And also, which comes first for you normally, the music or the lyrics?
Yeah, I think lyrics come pretty early on with a tune, but then I think in terms of the clothes for a particular track, the arrangement, the way that you bring the identity of something to life so that it takes on its own personality. And then I think in terms of how far can I stretch that credibly. For instance, there's one song that's based on my experiences in Iceland and the way that affected me. And I think, well, I want to get that sort of primal energy from the extreme and the extremely harsh weather conditions. But at the same time, I think, well, of course, the palette of paints has got to extend via acoustic instruments, and it's got to extend to electric instruments or different vocal styles. And how do you get something that's convincingly an Icelandic portrait when you're borrowing the tools from all over the place? But at the end of the day, I'm trying to bring a focus on that particular place, which was extremely close to the North Pole. One of the places I was playing out there, we were very close to it, and so that influences the whole thing. So it's one of those journeying songs, and I suspect the whole of the album will be like a journey, and it'll be journeying to different places, of course. But I was born in Pimlico, but ever since I was born, it was always passport to Pimlico, led it to America.
The world is your palette.
I guess so.
The last 6 years seem to have been the most prolific in your career so far. You've been pretty busy, constantly touring and recording, and you're having a greater level of success now, I would say. And I know that coincides with your marriage to Jo, so I was wondering, is she the inspiration for that, or is it just that you got on a roll and you want to keep working while you've got the momentum going?
Well, she is extremely inspirational. She's a very, very hard worker. She's a committed world traveller. She is a true gypsy in spirit. She wants to see all of the world. She tells me that when her father bought her a globe when she was a child, she looked at it and said, I want to visit every single place on this map. She wanted to go everywhere. And so this year we'll be visiting Japan. I've played there before, but on the way back we're going to visit China. And she's an intrepid explorer. So
I guess that benefits your creativity.
That's right. Yes, it does. It works for me as well. So yeah, she takes me by the hand very often. Other times I'll take her places she hasn't been and say, "Oh, you really must see this. I think you might like it."
Mm-hmm. You've been in the business for quite a while now, so I was wondering, is there anything in particular that you credit for your longevity in the business, and what keeps you going? Also, is there anything or anyone in your early career that was maybe a particular influence or gave advice that you stuck with, which carried you through to continue making music?
Well, I think everyone influences you. I don't know what it was specifically that had me moving away from just the electric guitar. I mean, in the 1950s, when I first started buying records, I was listening to Hank Marvin and the Shadows, and listening to that stuff which they got from the surf music of the Ventures in the States, All of that was interesting. Of course, John Barry was covering some of that material and then moved into writing for movies, most famously the Bond movies, of course. But I think there's always been that idea of music as adventure, but then also as ambassador for all sorts of things, ambassador for peace and multiculturalism, and I feel we need that. We need what one time was called miscegenation, and I do think that the world, as a pejorative, I do think that the world is teetering on the brink right now of an almighty cataclysm. We've really got to try and make as many friends as we can with our neighbours and not marginalise the poor countries and not blast the hell out of them and expect they're going to be grateful for it down the line. So I was just thinking about the 1960s and the way that worked, and just writing about it, funnily enough. Songs of the stature of Eleanor Rigby and some of the Dylan things, Blowing in the Wind and With God on Our Side. And in general, I don't find that people are writing too much stuff of that quality. So, with a kind of compassion behind it all.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to take you back now to the days when you first left Genesis to embark on a solo career. Was that quite a daunting task for you after being part of a collaborative writing process where you've got strong writers with strong opinions bouncing ideas off each other, to working solo where it's basically down to you to come up with the material and write the songs without any maybe influence from other people directing you in a particular way?
Well, sometimes bands are able to collaborate, but sometimes they end up blocking each other, and I think the trouble with the shared creative process is that there's usually only really room for a couple of writers on any one particular tune, and the founder members of any one particular group, I'm thinking, tend to hold sway, whether it's Lennon and McCartney, but then, you're marginalising someone like a George Harrison. So I understand for George that he had to really work outside the Beatles in order to come to fruition as the great writer and visionary that he became. And then you come to a point where you start doing it for fun again, perhaps, but I felt I had a lot to say, and I'm still doing it. I'm still making a noise for a living. That's what I do. That's what moves me. And the idea of having, brain children that might be stillborn isn't terribly good for someone like me. Mm-hmm. I think if you're if you're a passive character and you're working in a band where you have other writers who impose their will, that's okay if you're a passive character, but if you need to be very active, then you need to work in a much more subtle way on people to get your own way.
You have had lots of collaborations over your solo career, ranging from Richie Havens and Randy Crawford on your earlier albums to Steve Howe, Chris Squire. Is there anyone that you'd still like to work with or have solid plans to work with?
Well, there's been a number of collaborations that have been mooted that are in the wind. Some of them I haven't managed to explore. I mean, funnily enough, the late great Keith Emerson, I do think he was truly great, asked me at one point to form a band with Jack Bruce, and we rehearsed together. And it looked like go at one point, and then he and Jack fell out, which is so sad because they're both gone and they were both brilliant. And so I looked forward immensely to working with two brilliant characters, and I like to think I might have been able to bring out the best in them by saying, you did something amazing at one point, and I think you can do something amazing again now. So sadly that wasn't to be. There are a number of possible combinations that have been mooted. Meanwhile, I've got a commitment to try and keep the Genesis thing alive, and also march onwards with new solo stuff. But yeah, there will be collaborations in future, certainly.
You spoke briefly there about keeping the Genesis legacy alive, and I was wondering, in light of Phil Collins' announcement that he's coming out of retirement, have you had any correspondence with him lately?
Well, I've wished him well with that. I think that I don't know what that's going to become. Do you know what I mean? I think I wish him a full return to a full career and happy life, and to be as active as ever. At the end of the day, you know, that's personal choice. So, you know, we're all rooting for him there, and if he would like to work with me in any shape or form, I'll be very, very open to that, of course. We
just mentioned there's some famous names, and we've lost a lot of great musicians in the last year. I'm thinking especially of Chris Squire and Keith Emerson. I was just wondering, does it make you think about your own mortality, and is there an urgency there to record and get out any material that you want to write and perform?
There is that. There is the feeling of, you know, the march of time and the ticking clock. And of course, I still think of myself as young, but, you know, the reality is, you know, that I've been making records for a very long time now. I've actually been making music, or trying to, since I was 2 years old, and it's a ridiculous thing. But you know, that means 64 years I've been plugging away at it, and you know, that's 3 times as long as some guy laughed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I realize I've been very lucky, but I'm still very passionate about music, and I hope to be making music for many years to come.
As time goes by, there's a lot of classic albums which are being remastered and released. But more recently, I'm thinking with the Genesis Revisited project, and lately in the past few weeks, Francis Dunnery has re-recorded It Bites tracks and released those. Do you think that's something we'll be seeing a lot more of in the future?
Is that, you know, retrospectives are, you know, very much in the wind at the moment. You know, the reassessment of things, whether it's dusting off old masters and remixing them, or whether it's, you know, in the shape of going back to the drawing board and re-recording these things. I think good music stands the test of time. I like to think it's possible. Maybe if Beethoven was around and he'd done one recording of his fifth, he might like to revisit it at some point and do it again and stick some synths on it, or whatever it is that he wants to do. But, you know, it is the writer's prerogative to do that, and also to try and keep great material alive. So I get great pleasure out of playing things that were old favourites for people and doing them live again, you know, such as Cinema Show and Get Them Out by Friday, you know, both from the early 70s, 72 and 73. They still feel current, and I think certain songs sound sweeter with the passing of time.
Is it a case of you want to get a better quality of recording than the original, or is it also that you want to improve on your own performance, that you think you can do better than the way you performed it originally?
Yeah, I think to come up with alternative versions is the important thing. If you feel, you know, that something was a truly great piece of music, but you may feel that it was hastily put together, the tempo may not have been quite right, or it might have been slightly out of tune, slightly out of time, a bit distorted. All those things that the artist is thinking, well, I did it on 78 back then, never mind 45, never mind 33, never mind digital. What would it be like now to do something super clean and only have the distortion where we want it? You know, the extra compression and distortion in the grooves. So an audience is always going to be divided. If people see the definitive version as the one that they heard, you know, when they were 16, I understand that. I feel the same way about Dwayne Eddy recordings, but at the same time I'm aware that Dwayne Eddy re-recorded things with Chester Thompson on drums, and note for note, but cleaner. I understand understand that. You know, something about early vinyl, and vinyl in general perhaps, is the fact that you get extra compression and distortion because of the fact that it's on plastic. But sometimes it doesn't suit every genre of music. It doesn't suit acoustic music. It might be fine for piano, bass, drums and guitars and what have you, but if it gets, if it gets more complex than that, acoustic guitars never really benefited from vinyl. Not in my book, not in my experience.
Yeah. So now, after the current US tour, you're also going to be visiting Japan, and then you have a festival in the UK later in the year. I was just wondering what your plans are after the tour.
Well, you're quite right. I'm playing a festival in London at the O2, which is, the large arena. Looking forward to doing that. Apart from that, I have less touring this year because I wanted to concentrate on recording, and I've got a lot of recording commitments. So in a sense, this tour that's coming up for the US and Canada and the one in Japan, that's pretty much going to be it for this year. So it's a case of catching it at this point. And there is also, the aspect of I think that if you play places too often, just the same places, then you are in danger of perhaps being a tad too available. And I think it is lovely to go back to places that you haven't done for a bit and be able to say, well, I haven't done the West Coast for a bit. Very nice to do that now, so looking forward to it tremendously.
So once you've finished a tour, does it take a while to adjust back into a normal routine? After having played on stage every night in front of thousands of fans, to go back to a daily normal life, should we say, how easy is that?
Well, yeah, I must admit, we were out touring at the end of last year. We did 3.5 months straight. And so Brett, my wife, and I found that for every social engagement that we attended after that, just before Christmas, we passed out at every opportunity, practically, with our faces in our dinners a lot of the time. And so it took a while to adjust to civilian life after being flat out on the road. But that all changed by about a New Year's Eve. We were watching a live concert in a cinema that was being broadcast from Berlin, and watching Anna Sophie Mutter playing the marvellous virtuosic violin that she does. And I managed to stay awake for that. Sadly, my wife next to me passed out for that one. There have been all sorts of things. We went to see Star Wars, and I passed out for that. Not that it wasn't a great movie, it's just that, that kind of touring does catch up with you, and jet lag and all of that, and one is only human after all.
Yeah. So how do you fill your time away from music? How do you switch off and relax? Or do you always take a guitar with you in case you get that urge to be creative and write?
Well, I'm in Norfolk at the moment. We live in London, but we're in Norfolk, which is about 130 miles away, and I have brought up the guitar to practice. So most of the time I do, and I was playing recently, recording recently, and it's a blues album I did many years ago, and I've just been working on 2 new tracks for it, and I was playing so hard I've literally shredded my blisters, and I need 2 days off.
Well, I hope they recover quickly in time for your tour.
Yeah, no, I should be all right then. I haven't done that since the 1960s, so I must have been going at it pretty hard.
Do you listen to much music when you have spare time?
Oh, well, I do. I mean, I spend a lot of time listening to music. It's often radio and listening to things, and I tend to get a lot of CDs sent to me or given to me because people, are interested in what I think about it. So I'm it's part of the working day is listening to new stuff all the time, and it's surprising what that throws up. Often very interesting acts I get to listen to, but you know, sometimes we just get inundated when we're on tour. You know, it's impossible to carry everything with us. So it's not the best place to receive things on tour, you know, because there's a limited amount of luggage space. I don't have a spare spaceship that I can throw it all in and have it flown back to Niles for me. It doesn't work quite like that, you know. It's a physical thing on tour.
Yeah.
The limitation.
You mentioned earlier that this music you're working on at the moment or recording is flamenco based. Is that the theme of the whole album or just one particular track?
Well, only part of it is flamenco based. I've got flamenco on one track, and I'm really pleased with the way that came out because it's kind of played flat out. It's not so much dynamically varied. It's you know it's kind of no holds barred. So I'm really pleased that's worked out because I've normally played more gentle nylon guitar, whereas this is fast and furious and rhythms that are played on the guitar, different parts of the guitar, and using the guitar as drum as well as you know the gentle stringed instrument that we know. So it's a bit like firing salvos over things, cadenzas. Yeah, it's kind of lightning fast and all difficult stuff, but I have a lot of fun doing that, you know, and these fast rhythms as well, complex. So it's a different kind of progressive in a way.
Sounds challenging. So when do you expect that to see the light of day? Any idea yet when that will be released?
Well, I'm hoping to finish it by October. As I'm doing less touring, it means that I should be able to get on with that. But, you know, there aren't enough hours in the day. I could do with writing really, really quickly. I've got a ton of things written, but, you know, you always want to select the best of what you've got, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I wish you continued success, and I look forward to seeing you on the tour in Los Angeles on the 1st of April. Good luck, and thanks for your time.
Oh, okay, great, Dave. Okay, thank you. Yeah, look forward to talking to you and seeing you then. Bye-bye.